Alright, first thing that I always tell my students when they want to make a longboard is I want to have them sketch out something on how they want it to look like. Not the shape-wise, but more like design-wise. And our typical longboards are going to be something about 10 inches long, or wide and about 40 inches long. And so that's kind of our workspace to work in. And you can make it whatever size you want, but this is the standard size to work with. So what I want to make sure the students understand is that they're not deciding on the shape yet. So don't worry about like the shape of your longboard yet, what's going to be cut out. Don't worry about that yet. We're more worried about just what the actual design look-wise. Do you want to have stripes? Do you want to have some kind of crazy design going on inside there, or whatever it is? And so easiest ones are going to be stripes if you want to do something like that. And so it just needs to add up to 10 inches. So maybe you want to have a stripe right in the middle. Maybe that stripe you want it to be, say, 2 inches wide on something like that. And so we still have to come up with at least 10 inches total. So we want to have a little small stripe next to that on either side. Maybe those are going to be 1 inches each. So that's 1, and that's 2, that's a 1. So we still have 6 inches we have to deal with. So maybe we want to have this a 3-inch stripe and a 3-inch stripe. And that would add up to 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So whatever it is that you plan on doing, just make sure it adds up to 10 inches this way, and then 40 inches long. Maybe you want to have these 2 1-inch stripes be a darker wood, maybe some cherry or walnut or cedar or something like that to give it a little bit of color on that. And you can go with whatever kind of wood and look that you want. But that's the first thing, is just to sketch out what it is you want your longboard to look like. Later on we can cut whatever shape we want out of this. Alright, first I want to show you just with the solid wood, and I've already gone ahead and cut several strips that add up to 10 inches total when you put them all together. So I've just got some maple, walnut, and some cedar, and just cut them in different widths here. So when you put them all together, and these are going to fit nice and tight together when we glue and clamp that as well. But it just needs to add up to about 10 inches. And if you're a little bit less, that's okay, but we try to get exactly 10 inches there if you can. Length on these, we need to have at least 40. I would recommend maybe go just a hair longer, because after we glue it we might want to trim it just a little bit, but get at least 40 inches on the length there. And on that table saw, when you're ripping these down to width, on these really narrow ones and other things like that, you need to make sure the guard is removed and we have that splitter behind the blade. If you need my help with that, please call me over and I'll help you with that. But get it whatever type of wood you want, and add it up to 10 inches total on that. So that's going to be out of the solid wood. And I would leave the thickness as thick as possible. Don't plane anything down yet, because we want to be able to glue these all together edge to edge first. Once you got it all figured out looks wise as far as what stripes you want where and everything, go ahead and glue it together. Using the glue table is a lot easier. If you use a bench top, just make sure you put some butcher paper down. I just like to just tip up all these just on edge just like this, so I can know which edge is going to get glued. Last one that way, and then just get a good bead of glue on this and spread it around so there's no dry spot. Remember, we want to work quickly before this glue dries here. So it covers the entire edge. You don't want any dry spot on those edges of those boards there. So, and you got to work quick, especially if you have a lot of boards there. You want to make sure you get both edges of all the middle boards there. This one I've already got glue on, but I want to make sure I get glue on this edge as well. So these narrow boards, they warp and bow a little bit, and so we just want to make sure that when this gets all placed together in the clamps that it's pressed nice and tight. One thing I like to do is actually work on one side at a time. I don't worry about over here, even though it's lifting up a little bit, but I just get one side squared up and cleaned up as best I can, and just put a little bit of pressure at first just to kind of tighten up the boards, and you can shift and adjust things as needed. Once you get a little bit of pressure there, go ahead and work your way to the next area here. Now if things have moved on you, you can press it down or lift it up, whatever you need to do. Again, just a little bit of pressure right now. See a little bit of glue squeeze out, and then we'll move over here. And again, I can press and push these boards to make sure that they stay nice and flat. We'll come over to the end here, and I've got to adjust a few boards over here. And it's okay if they're not perfectly flat, but we want to get them as close as possible. Now before you do too much pressure on this, we want to make sure we also put clamps on the top as well. We want to alternate these clamps, that way those boards don't warp too much on you. And then once you get all the clamps on, I really want you to crank this thing down pretty tight so you see the glue squeezing out all over every clamp. Nice and tight on this. Okay. And we'll let that sit and dry. Make sure your name gets written on it as well, though. So. Alright, once your board's dry, just make sure you scrape off any of this excess glue from when you clamped it up. And then we'll show you how to get this one piece into two. One for the top, one for the bottom out of that. We're going to resaw this in half. So we'll scrape all the glue off. Okay, before we resaw this, which is cutting it in half down the middle, we just need to get it flat on both faces. And so just send a light pass through the planer. Right now this is about 1 inch thick or so. So I'm just going to light pass up one side, flip it over and get the other side. I really want to still leave it as thick as possible on this. So we're just going to go just a light pass first, and then after that we're going to send it one more time just to get it flat. Okay, now what I've done here, in order to resaw this in half, I've taken the guard off. I've also added a little splitter behind the blade, that's important. I've also added this resaw fence. Basically it's just an external fence I hooked onto the side of the fence there, and I just want to get this, when I line this up, I just eyeball it right in the center. And also my blade height, I'm going to do this in several passes, so don't have the blade height up really high on the first pass, a little bit at a time. The crucial thing on this is that you keep this board nice and tight against that fence as you run this through. Okay, we're going to do several passes. We also want to keep the same face against the fence every time. Coming on here. We're just going to keep it nice and tight. All the way, and then we're going to flip our board around, keep the same face against the fence, run it again. Okay, now I'm going to raise the blade up higher. And we're going to get our second pass on this. Same face against the fence. Flip your board around, run that again. Shut that off. You'll notice when you do the resaw on the table saw that it doesn't get all the way through on this. And so for that last little bit here, we're just going to go to the band saw. Just get our fence set, again, just that same distance away from the slot that our table saw did. Have your guard just above your board, just enough. And you want to just make sure your board stays nice and tight against that fence. Got a top and a bottom, same design, same look on our boards here. So we just need to plane these down a little bit thinner, sand them down as well, and then we'll be ready to go. Because my planer won't go down very much less than 1/4 of an inch, I think that's the lowest it'll go. How we can get this down really thin is use what's called a carrier board. It's just something I've made. It's exactly 1 inch thick that you can actually place your board on top of the carrier board, and that way it adds 1 inch thickness to this and it'll feed it through. It just has a little bit thicker spot just right at the very end there that'll help grab your board and catch it and pull it through. And so these boards are 3/8 of an inch thick right now, and I'm going to get them all the way down to a little bit more than 1/8, maybe 0.150 on the planer. And then we're going to go to the time saver and sand them down even smaller than that. So I'm going to start off just a little bit less than 3/8, so maybe 5/16 would be good. And again, we want to add on 1 inch of thickness when you're setting this. And so I'm going to set this to actually 1 5/16 instead of just 5/16. And that way, when I put my board on with the carrier board, it should take it down and actually make the board that 5/16 on that. And so we'll send that through. Once you've got it to 0.150 on the planer, go ahead and sand it on the time saver down to 0.100. So they'll be really thin here. 0.100. Go ahead and start at 0.150. Start at where you stopped on the planer. And then we're going to go about 1/100 of an inch down until we get to 0.100. That's where we want to stop. You do not need the carrier board for these. This time saver sander can go down very thin. So you can send both of those through at the same time. And we go 0.100 is where we're stopping. I like to flip them over and get both faces. All the way down to 0.100. Okay, now when you're ready to glue this up, we've got our 2 pieces that we've planed and sanded down. This will be our top and our bottom. And then the middle part is out of some 1/8 inch Baltic birch plywood, and you'll just need 3 pieces here of that, and you'll notice the grain direction on this is going to alternate which way they're going here. That'll give it some more strength here. So now these pieces are pre-cut already for you, so just ask me and I'll let you know where those are at. But you'll need 3 of those if you're doing the solid wood on the top and bottom for this as well. So we'll start off with one of our faces here. We'll place it down, get glue on the whole thing, and then we'll place one of our core pieces in, glue that. Next one, glue that. Next one, glue that. And then we'll take our last piece, put it on top, and then we're going to stick it in the vacuum bag to suck this all down tight. You do need to work very quickly when you do this. I would recommend you use a brush, a roller brush here, and some glue, and be pretty liberal with the glue when you're putting the glue on. So you may need to make sure that the entire thing gets covered in glue, especially all the way up into the edges and everywhere. So get quite a bit on there. You'll notice also I've got some butcher paper down so that we don't get any glue on my bench tops. If you do, please get that wiped up right away. But work fairly quickly and all the way to the edges. You don't want to have any dry spot at all on this entire thing here with the glue. I've had a lot of students glue up longboards that later partially come apart because they didn't get the glue all the way to the edges. So spread that around, work quickly. And don't be afraid to use a lot of glue on this. Whole thing covered, and then we'll go ahead and add our next board right on top. We'll just apply our glue right on top of that one, and then get them all glued up. Okay, once you get them all on, carefully pick them up, and then you're going to get this onto the mold and get that placed where you want on the mold. So we've got our mold here, and just line this up centered on here so it's got equal spacing on both sides and everything's pressed together nice and tight. We need to get this in the vacuum bag right away. So call me over and we'll get this set. Be careful when you're sliding in the vacuum bag that you don't poke a hole in the bag. Just kind of slide it in there. We're going to take our little clamps and just clamp these on so the bag stays together tight. Once you get it all clamped up, go ahead and turn the vacuum on. It'll suck all the air out of this, and while it's being sucked out, you can make sure it's all lined up straight, exactly where you want it, and we'll get all the air sucked out of here. Now once that vacuum shuts off automatically, you need to let it sit and dry here for at least 2 hours. Let it fully dry. Alright, now once it's dry and take it out of the vacuum bag, you can go ahead and trace whatever pattern you want to put on your longboard. I've got 4 different patterns if you want to look at any of mine and use. If you want to just draw your own shape, that's fine. Just place whatever pattern you want on here and line it up exactly where you want it. And just go ahead and trace it. Just make sure that you have a good solid line that you can see really well, and you might want to have someone help hold this down nice and tight for you if you need to, just making sure that everything's right where you want it there. So just go ahead and trace it. When you're cutting this out on the bandsaw, just make sure that you leave your line. Do not cut off your line at all. So I usually try to keep about a 1/16 inch away from my line at least. And you don't have to do this in one pass. You don't have to follow it all the way. Go ahead and just do small little sections at a time until you kind of get it all removed there. But we'll cut it out on the bandsaw. Okay, now you'll want to use the disc sander for any of these outside curves here or along the back end here. Any inside curves and other parts that are inside, you're going to want to use the spindle sander over here as well. For the long edges of your board here, maybe these ones here, you're going to want to use that horizontal belt sander, and you can get all those down. We just want to sand it all the way down to our line everywhere around on this. Now you're going to want to sand until the edge of it is nice and smooth all the way around. If you run your finger around the whole thing, you won't feel any bumps or rough patches or anything like that. So if there are any more bandsaw marks or anything else, keep sanding until those edges are nice and smooth all the way around. Just take the router with a small round over bit inside there and run it across both faces, across the top and across the bottom underneath, all the way around this entire thing, just to get rid of those sharp corners there. And I usually have my board clamped hanging off the edge of the bench top so you don't hit the bench top with the router there. this point you're going to want to sand the entire thing, both faces, get the edges. You know, you can do those by hand if you want. Get those nice and smooth. You could use electric sanders and round them over a little bit more if you want, but just get the entire thing sanded really well, all the way to 220 grit sandpaper. Alright, now that it's all sanded real smooth all the way up to 220 grit, we're ready to drill our holes for the trucks. And I've got a couple patterns here that you can use. This one here is just for regular longboards, it just has the holes lined up there. It also has a little center line where we can line it up for the middle of the board. This one here is if you want to do the drop through trucks. Either one will work fine, it's up to you which one you want to do. I'm just going to do the regular trucks here. We need to find the very center of our longboard so we can make sure that the front and the back trucks are lined up perfectly in line with each other. And oftentimes students struggle with this, trying to find the middle of something. So if you just measure, and I got 5 and 5/16 right there, trying to find the middle of that, it's a little bit harder. Make an easy one, just go up until it's nice and easy. Well, there's 6 inches, that's a nice easy measurement there. And so then we can just mark our center line right where an easy spot is. And then same thing over on the other side of the board here. Again, find an easy spot. Okay, go up until it's easy. All right, there's 4 inches, that's an easier spot right there. And so then I know that 2 inches is the center right there. So just make it easy on you when you're finding the middle. Put a little mark here, a little mark here, and then you can just take a long straight edge or any kind of board that has a nice flat edge on it all the way across, and you can draw your center line all the way down. You really don't need to draw it in the middle. All we need that line is just somewhere near the front of the board, a line drawn, and then the same thing down at the back of the board here where our trucks are going to be placed. Just a little line that we can see there. And then when you're tracing this here, we want to make sure, this says the front of the board right here, this little hole with a line. I'm just going to line that up at the front of the board, getting my dashed line lined up on my center mark. Same thing over here, making sure that dashed line is lined up exactly perfect. And then we can just trace the 4 holes that we need to drill. We'll do the same thing on the back of the board. We'll just place this part here on the back of the board, line up our center line exactly where it needs to be, and we can trace those 4 holes right there. Now if you'd like to move this forward or back, wherever, depending on your longboard where you want to place these, that's fine. As long as it's on that center line, you're fine. So if you want to move it forward more, that's fine. Drilling these out, we'll use a 3/16 inch drill bit, and please don't drill into my bench tops. Don't just drill straight down. Let's hang it over the edge of the bench top here when we're drilling, and just get it straight up and down, all the way through on all those. You get it right in the center of those holes there, and then we'll do the same on the back here. Again, don't go into my bench top. Now I also like to use a countersink bit, just a small countersink here, that you can use to make the heads of the screws fit down inside the board just a little bit. You don't need to go too deep. You know, just enough that the heads of those screws can fit down into those holes there a little bit. We'll do the same on the other side here. Okay, sand off the pencil marks here and any other final sanding you do when it's ready for the lacquer and the grip. We're going to spray our longboard now with 3 coats of lacquer, sanding it lightly in between each coat. On the final coat of lacquer, before it's dry, we're going to sprinkle on the grip, and what I use is just some of this crushed glass, and you can just sprinkle this on there and it works really well for the grip. So we'll get 3 coats of lacquer on this. Want to buy any wheels and trucks for your longboards, I usually just go to Amazon, just search longboard trucks, and the ones I usually get, I think they're like 38 bucks or something like that. This one's right here. It comes with everything, the wheels, the bolts, the bearings, trucks, everything, and you can even choose what color wheels you want and everything like that. And so again, they're only like 37 bucks or 38 bucks for the ones that you want. You can get those if you want. That's the ones I usually get.